start your day the right way. It's Marv and Rauh in the morning.
Yes, and welcome on into Marvin Rauh in the morning. I'm Christian Rauh. Nick Maravette's here. Happy Tuesday to you. We are just days away from the end of the end of 2025. It's the end of the world as we know it for sure, but 2026 right around the corner. Lots of stuff to talk about. College football playoffs on the horizon. NFL playoffs are almost there as well. Monday Night Football got wild, and I think there's maybe some possibilities that you and I need to have some hypothetical conversations when it comes to the NFL as well. Nick, wild Monday, and it's only getting better. I feel like every morning we wake up and we're like, man, this has been a wild sports week. It just continues to be that way.
We've certainly been on an unprecedented heater of great games and just unbelievable news coming out left and right. So I'm excited to break it all down right here, right now. Marvin Rauh in the morning.
That word for about 5 years now has gave me like PTSD. I don't know if you can use the word unprecedented anymore. I feel like that gives you triggers now. I don't think you can use that word. I feel like that's against the law these days.
I might just be too young. I might be.
Oh man,
flew over my head.
Again. Maybe I'm just. What am I, boomer? What is this? What is going on here? Let's talk college football playoffs. I know we're a couple days away from the actual games, but I want to dig into these previews, and I want to really give our listeners a chance to dive into these and give some comments and really dive into it, because this Texas Tech Oregon game is fascinating because everyone agrees that it's close, but nobody really agrees why. And this is about Texas Tech proving that the Big 12 is real. I think so. Or is it Oregon proving that experience still matters when the lights turns off? And when the lights turn on, I should say, off. Look at that. I don't know, off, on, you name it. When the lights turn on, can Oregon really do it? Because I think one of these narratives changed on New Year's Day, Nick.
Absolutely. Yeah. What are we looking at here? Because Oregon and Texas Tech, I feel like Oregon has that path where they just got in and everyone's like, well, Oregon, what have they really done this year? They haven't really, they just they got the 5 seed. They got JMU. They didn't have to be in the Big Ten championship. Feels like they just kind of not snuck their way in, but found their way into one of the best spots in the college football playoff. And then Texas Tech, on the other hand, had to fight tooth and nail to come out of the Big 12, had to win the Big 12. I feel like if they had lost the Big 12, there would be some major, there would have been major movement. Let's put it that way. It wouldn't have been an Alabama loss in the SEC championship type of movement. And they still feel to me, and this could just be me being incorrect, but this is my vibe assessment of the situation. Texas Tech feels to me like the underdog in this whole thing. Nobody is expecting Texas Tech to do much based on what I'm seeing from the talking heads out there. And being a Big 12 fan, Texas Tech is a real force.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at Texas Tech either way. They either have been overrated. Some people think that they're overrated. And then on the flip side, they've been underestimated. And the next, I mean, this is what you really have to decide next. Forget everything else. The game's simple. Oregon, wants to find a way to get the run. They want to find a way to push that. I personally think that Texas Tech is underrated. And I'm going to give you a little stat here that I saw. If you compare the resumes between Texas Tech and Oregon, just compare down the final college football playoff rankings, if you will. Texas Tech beat the current number 12 team BYU by 27. They also beat the current number 12 team BYU by 22. They also beat the current number 15 team by 24, the current 21 team by 24. On the flip side, Oregon lost to the current number 1, Indiana, by 10. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with losing the number 1 team in the country. Got it. They beat the number 16 team by 15. That is really their only win that you can really look into. The second best win against a G5 school, if you want to count Oregon into the mix. I think Texas Tech is more battle tested, but that's not what the narrative says. That's not what the narrative says whatsoever. And then I think you have to slow it down a little bit here and then look at how Oregon wants to win this football game. Oregon obviously played very good against James Madison in the first round of the playoffs. If they run it early, I think they win this game. If they win the run game early, they win. But on the flip side, Texas Tech has shut it down with 4. I mean, they've shut it down before. I mean, Oregon is playing left-handed. If they shut it down right away, Oregon is having a really hard time. There's no hiding here. Texas Tech has the best run defense in America, but on the flip side, Oregon's pretty good on the run side.
Texas Tech also has one of the best defenses in America. Period. When you look at the amount of, I'm just looking at the most basic stat of all time, points. When you look at the amount of points they gave up this season, They're holding teams to, like, I would guess an average of about 15 points a game, probably less. I 17 to Kansas, 26 to Arizona State, and 20 to Kansas State are the only teams that they gave up more than 15 points to this season. And obviously, Jacob Rodriguez potentially should have won the Heisman. Definitely in that conversation. I don't think it's as loud as Genty and Hunter as last year, but definitely one of the he won the best defender in the country award. So, like, Texas Tech has one of the best defenses in the country. And you're exactly right. If Oregon does get off to a good start, like, they have a chance in this game. But the way I look at it is if they don't, they just don't have a chance. It's just over. Texas Tech is the better team, at least when Oregon's offense is on the field. When Texas Tech's defense is out there, their unit is better. And obviously, when you look at the front and the run game, I'm not too worried. Like, I if you want to look at that one part specifically, I actually like Texas Tech's odds. Maybe Oregon can come out with some fancy plays, some trick, not necessarily trick, but some play action, some funky stuff that gets Texas Tech on their heels and gets Oregon in the game early. That's the only way I see Oregon sticking around in this one. Resume this, resume that. We're going to talk about resumes later in this show on a totally different topic. So I understand that sometimes resumes don't tell the whole story. But boy, does Texas Tech look really good and battle tested. And we just haven't really seen that from Oregon yet. So for me, I'm a big, like, what have you done for me lately? What can I actually prove when I'm talking about this stuff? Oregon can't do a whole lot for me. I am absolutely liking Texas Tech significantly more in this matchup.
I wonder, I think it's the most overrated stat in, like, the history of sports, but I wonder if time of possession actually comes into play here. Like, when I'm thinking about the run game, when I'm thinking about stopping the run, if Oregon can control the time of possession, meaning they control what they're doing with the defense, keep the defense on the field, keep them gassed, if they can have a better shot at beating Texas Tech. Because if the run game stalls, I think the game becomes about one thing, and that's looking at these quarterbacks. When you're looking at Baron Morton, when you're looking at Dante Moore, this isn't about the arm talent. This is about who survives pressure when the game stops being clean. I mean, and that's really what comes down to it. If this game stops being clean, if this game gets a little tough, if there's pressure, I mean, what happens on the flip side? Neither quarterback has played this exact game before. That's what makes this dangerous. There's obviously some potential injury concerns. There's obviously some facts that, Dante Moore, some people see him as the best quarterback potentially going in the NFL draft. What is your take on the quarterbacks this year?
Yeah, you obviously have to be aware of Morton's health. And just what Texas Tech has been through this season. Obviously, some depth there at quarterback too. But Dante Moore is potentially the best prospect. You could probably say Fernando Mendoza, obviously the Heisman winner, and there's a couple other quarterbacks out there as well. But Oregon doesn't have some slump at quarterback, and I do think that's going to come into play here. But at some point too, you have to remember that the quarterbacks can only do so much, right? Like, they can run it and they can throw it and they can hand it off. And they can call audibles, but they can't catch the ball down the field, or at least it's very rare for them to do so. And they can't necessarily run it the same way a running back would. So while the quarterback will be big in this one, I'm not going to put all of my stock into Dante Moore. It's probably I'm willing to lean Dante Moore's way in this one between him and Baron Morton, but I like Texas Tech's entire offense as a whole in this game a lot more. And the fact that they're not playing at Oregon, obviously they would be playing at Texas Tech if they were to play at any home site. But the fact that they're not playing at Oregon, I don't think Texas Tech's going to be too shaken up in this one. They played in a Big 12 championship this year. They played in that big game. Oregon did not. Baron Morton, yes, the injury concern, but that's the only concern that I have as far as Morton goes. I would be a little bit more. I wonder if Moore can handle this, the magnitude of the situation. Can he handle, being down 10 in the fourth quarter? I could see that being a very real possibility, and Oregon has to make the plays to come back in this one. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm not saying Moore doesn't have the talent. I'm just saying I think Texas Tech is a full, complete team, and they're not going to make a whole lot of mistakes to give Oregon a chance to get back in this game.
Yeah, I wonder how much the neutral site comes into play. Again, with the fact of the quarterfinals being at neutral sites, this one being at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens in Florida. I wonder how much that does come into play here. Who travels better? Is it Texas Tech, which geographically you're closer to Miami, so you would think that they would travel. I've saw some things on social media, people already making the drive from Lubbock to Miami, and I mean, that's fun. That's I don't recommend doing that. I don't recommend driving that long. I've done that before across the country, but I mean, sure, That's interesting for sure. On the flip side here, how important is it for teams that have been there before between teams that haven't? Because Oregon obviously was in the college football playoffs last year. Now you could say that they were embarrassed in the college football playoffs last year against Ohio State, losing 41-21 in the quarterfinals in the Rose Bowl. But on the flip side, Texas Tech's never been here before. This is the first double-digit win season for Joey McGuire with Texas Tech, and everybody says that the only reason they're there is because they bought themselves in the transfer portal. Nothing wrong with that. Everybody else could have done the exact same thing, but how much does it matter, that experience in this process, right? I mean, Oregon knows what embarrassment feels like on stage. Texas Tech doesn't know what losing here feels like. Experience keeps you steady, but hunger makes you dangerous, right? Which one do you think is more important?
Yeah, you bring up a really good point when it comes to, the hunger aspect of it, because I think it'd be really easy for someone to look at this and say, well, Texas Tech's never been there before. They are the hungry ones. Oregon does not want to repeat of last year, right? Like they were a really high-powered team. Unfortunately, they just ran into a buzzsaw and they looked like a peewee football team out there. Let's just call it how it was. They did not look good against Ohio State. So they don't want a repeat of that. And, when you're kind of weighing the two sides of hunger versus experience, the hunger side of it's pretty even. Like, yeah, Texas Tech, it's like a different kind of hunger. It's like they didn't eat at all in the last 3 days, and Oregon's had a few saltines. Like, they're both pretty hungry, but it's about the same. Oregon does have the experience, but that was last season. That was a different team in the playoff. This Texas Tech team had to be basically perfect throughout the year to make the Big 12 championship game. They played in the Big 12 championship game. Granted, it was against a team they'd seen before in BYU, and that's always going to give a sense of not necessarily comfort, but they've played that team before, as opposed to playing some new team that they have. It's just a different process, I feel like. And so I'm going to lean Texas Tech here just because they are the Big 12 team that has to prove themselves in the college football playoff. They have to prove that, BYU was 11-1 and didn't get in. Like, if Texas Tech doesn't win this game, Arizona State was really close with Texas last year. If Texas Tech doesn't make some noise here, it's going to look really bad for the Big 12. I think that's on their shoulders. They've played in big games. They've won big games this season. Everything to me is pointing Texas Tech. And I don't know if that's because I'm a Big 12 guy and maybe I'm blinded by the light, but boy, does it seem like a Red Raiders victory this weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my prediction for the comments and let people think what they want to say, but this is what I know for sure. If Oregon controls the run, they prove experience still rules this sport. And they prove that last year was just maybe a fluke against Ohio State, and they're right back in the mix if they control the run, especially against Texas Tech's best run defense in the country. But if Texas Tech forces those third and longs, if they force Dante Moore to make tough decisions, they're going to announce themselves nationally. Joey McGuire puts himself on the map. Transfer portal, it doesn't matter. Either way, this game isn't about being close. It's about being believed. That's where I'm going. That's where I want to go. So let me know what you believe and which side you're on. Big 12 statement or Oregon reality check. Let us know in the comments description below, because one of those takes are about the age fast. And we're not afraid of having takes age fast because we have plenty of those on this channel. They definitely, some don't age well and some are just what it is, but we're not afraid to let our opinions be known. Let's continue talking about this college football playoffs here, because I never thought I'd say this sentence out loud. Indiana is favored over Alabama in the Rose Bowl. That's not a gimmick. It's not a feel-good story. Today we're not asking who wins. We're asking who's real. That's what I want to know. Who's real in this case? Because, does Alabama, do they still scare you? Or is the aura officially gone? Does the Oklahoma comeback story that happened last game, does that give you a lot of belief in Bama?
Oh, absolutely not. I do not feel the same way about Bama that I have in quite some time. And I think the biggest thing for me is the SEC championship this season. If you want to look at this team in particular, obviously the Florida State loss at the beginning of the season was kind of that first bad taste in the mouth. And then they lost to Oklahoma, but then they got them back. But they're a 3-loss team going into this playoff, with the loss to Florida State, Oklahoma, and then Georgia in the SEC championship. And as much as I realize, the conference championship should not impact how you're kind of perceived in the playoff, I understand that. I do have that same stance, honestly. They were embarrassed by Georgia. It was ugly. I was watching it, and honestly, I don't watch a ton of SEC championship games because They kind of all play out about the same. This one was ugly. It was disgusting, to be completely honest. So no, I don't feel confident in Alabama at all. This Indiana team, I think that there was a lot of question about what were they, having not really played a ton of big games last year. The big conversation was they schedule a bunch of cupcakes. They get into the playoff, they lose. Like it's whatever. That's the key now to making the playoffs is just play a bunch of nobodies. And then this year it was like, well, what has Indiana actually done? Who have they actually beat? They beat Iowa. Like what is that actually worth? And I'll tell you what, beating Iowa is worth basically nothing. We're going to move on. But then they beat Ohio State, and that was awesome. Like that. Okay, they can actually beat somebody. So, like, no, I don't have any belief in Alabama at this point. I am all in on the Hoosier train, and it really does kind of stem from the fact that Alabama they were embarrassed in the SEC championship game, plain and simple.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I think about the SEC championship game, obviously the score doesn't help, and obviously how Georgia got to Ty Simpson doesn't help as well. Right, exactly. I get that, but they were missing a lot of starters. If I'm just trying to think of how Bama fans might react to this, they were missing a lot of starters, and this is one of those games where I feel like you're expected to lose. Like Alabama feels like they're expected to lose, and this is the game that I think a lot of Bama fans love when you are expect to be the underdog. I'm sure Alabama loves to be the underdog because that hasn't happened a lot in the last couple decades. Everyone's jumping on Indiana. You got to love coming back to those. I'm sure that if Indiana loses this game mightily, I'm sure the comments are going to be right on after you, Nick. In this one, I think Alabama thrives as the hunter, not as the favor. I truly do. I think they've done it as Saban. I think even with DeBoer, I think they're going to thrive as the hunter. Indiana has never played a team with Alabama's survival ability, if you want to put that into perspective, because look what happened last week against Oklahoma. I completely counted them out after the first quarter. I completely did. So is this the same movie where everyone talks themselves into fading Bama? I know that's what you're kind of doing right now. And then something breaks late, like it happened against Oklahoma. Like where's your process right now? Is it the same movie or is it different?
Well, I was actually looking through some of these numbers because I'm a huge vibes guy. Like I think that's pretty well known at this point. That's how I work. But I do love looking through some stats. When was the last time that Alabama beat, like, or per ESPN analytics was a 28.6% chance of winning a game? Like that is a pretty heavy favorite for Indiana. It's not as close as I thought it was going to be. And then I looked ahead at some actual stats, some like high level stuff that I have to break out my readers for. And it's all right here. It makes complete sense why they're 28% chance to win this game. You mentioned there, do I have to convince myself or whatever of Alabama winning this or losing this game, fading Alabama? I was never under the impression they would win this game. And if Indiana, completely fumbles and all the Alabama, stands want to come after me, do it. I'll be wrong. But guess what? Yeah. Right now, it is not like it's not a question in my mind. Can Alabama keep up? Can Alabama keep this even remotely close and respectable? Because remember the conversation when they joined into the playoff and they stuck their way in, they're a 3-loss team. It's going to show against Indiana. This is absolutely going to be a one-sided affair. And if it's not, I'm wrong. I don't care. But I'm telling you right now, I don't see it going down any other way.
What Curt Cignetti has been very impressive. And Indiana is not like some Cinderella story either, although like you might think that just based on the history of their program. But they're not cute. They're not a Cinderella story. Like they're a legit team. And if you've seen some interviews in the past of Mendoza, right? Like he is so prepared. His football IQ is super impressive. I mean, if you're a Bama fan, I think you have to respect Mendoza. I think you just have to respect the way that he plays the game. I think he does it the right way. Is Indiana actually maybe? I mean, I don't know if I want to actually ask. I'm gonna do it anyways. Are they the most prepared team in college football? Like maybe not the most talented, right? But the most intentional. Curt Cignetti, I think, has them on a different level this way.
That's definitely, you nailed it on the head there, it's a very interesting way of phrasing it, but that is how this team feels. It just feels like they're so well prepared. They're that gift under the Christmas tree, if you will, to, kind of think back over the last few days, that's like perfectly wrapped. All of the seams, it's very square. It's a perfect cube too. It's not some oblong box, which, I mean, who doesn't love the oblong boxes? They might have a snowboard in them, but it's a perfect cube with the bow directly on the top. It's like there is nothing wrong with this package. It just all makes sense. And that's exactly what it feels like with this Indiana team. Very much bulletproof, prepared, as opposed to high level talent that's going to beat you, but they're going to have mistakes. They're going to make, they might miss here, but they're going to get you here because they've got an explosive capability. You nailed it. This is probably the most prepared team in college football. And I don't know if it's Curt Cignetti. Maybe it is Fernando Mendoza. You talked about how much football knowledge he has. He's also a great leader. But that, I think, is going to come into this game absolutely in a very big way. You have this, we brought this up a little bit before the show. Does Indiana have to make a mistake, or does Alabama have to be perfect, or what's the question there? I think Indiana has to make a multitude of mistakes for Indiana or for Alabama to be in this game. And with this perfection, kind of preparedness, I don't see that happening. I think they're a very sound football team.
Yeah, I mean, there's been two sides of Alabama this year. We've seen them where they have come back against Oklahoma, where they've been great. And then we've seen the SEC championship game. We've seen the Florida State game. We've seen moments where Alabama does not shine whatsoever. You could either say they're precise or they're dead. I mean, they can't run consistently. That's something that's been a problem. They can't live in third and long because that's when pressure comes. And we've seen that happen in the SEC championship game be an issue. They can't rely on QB processing or disguised pressures. If receivers drop passes, they're doomed. Because I think Ty Simpson does a very good job at getting it to their wide receivers. But how many drops does Ryan Williams have this year? I mean, there's been so many drops just for him alone. If they drop passes and they give Indiana a chance to continue any momentum they might have, I think they're doomed. And then honestly, I think you have to give Mendoza pressure. Can you do that? Well, you led the game in sacks against Oklahoma, where I thought it was going to be the flip side. You sacked Mateer 5 times. Can you do the same thing against the Heisman Trophy winner in Mendoza? And that's where I want to finish this conversation here. Heisman pressure versus, I guess, playoff scar tissue, as you will. Heisman winners often struggle their next game after, being named the Heisman Trophy winner. And Mendoza has been clean. He's a pretty clean quarterback. He's not flashy. We've mentioned he's very intentional with his game. Does this happen? Do you think that this is more of a fact where, the Heisman Trophy pressure gets to you, or that's just something he's not focused on? Who do you trust more? A guy who's been flawless in Mendoza, or a team that survives disasters yet again, like Alabama did against Oklahoma?
Well, really quick before I get to that answer, I want to bring something up really, it just kind of popped in my brain as you were breaking that whole situation down. Alabama has shown weakness this season multiple times. Do you really think Curt Cignetti is not going to dive into that tape and have this Indiana team completely ready to go? Like I trust Curt Cignetti to a fault. And I'm not even an Indiana fan. Like something about the dude, he knows what he's doing. And when it comes to Mendoza versus Simpson, it's not going to be same thing. Honestly, it's not even worth really talking about. I trust Mendoza here. I don't trust any part of Alabama. I've seen too much in these games that are too big and even honestly early on in the Oklahoma game, like that game, I know Alabama ended up winning that, but it was ugly from the start. Like, just give me everything give me everything Indiana, Curt Cignetti, Fernando Mendoza. It's not really a conversation to me. If this ends up being a great game, I will be happily wrong. Okay. I will eat that up. But for right now, I don't think this is going to be too much competition.
All right, clip this. Come back after the game and tell us who is real here, because I want to know. So, like, when it's in the fourth quarter and it's tight, remember this conversation, because it's not about talent. I don't know if it's about talent. I think it's belief under pressure. And you mentioned about Indiana. They're very intentional. Curt Cignetti gives you that old school football kind of vibes. You're a vibes guy, that's sure. But at the same time, whether you want to say it's the color of the helmet or not, just the logo, whatever it is, Alabama is still Alabama. And they found a way to do it last time against Oklahoma, and everybody counted them out after that first quarter. We'll see if that changes.
You get one.
And, well, maybe you get two. We'll find out. It'll be interesting. This game, I think, is the most intriguing game of the weekend for me, without question. Let's continue. Let's talk on college football previews here. Final preview of the day. If you want to get the game for Friday, Ohio State and Oh my God, Oregon. Yes, that's no, not Oregon.
Ole
Who's
Miss.
old? Nope. We're all over the place. Who did we just talk about yesterday? It was Ohio State and golly, I am lost right now. Um, Miami. There it is. I mean,
Yes.
there's the caffeine. If we already did that preview, and that one will be on the channel, so you can check that out. So, final one: Old Miss versus Georgia. That's where we're
There it
at.
is.
Let's dive in to Old Miss in Georgia for the final college football preview, the All-State Sugar Bowl. This one's in New Orleans. Old Miss continues the ride without Lane Kiffin. I mean, they looked okay against Tulane. They looked all right, but on the flip side, we continue to talk about that SEC championship when we talk about Alabama. Georgia had a heyday with Alabama in the SEC championship game. Can they continue that ride against another SEC foe in Old Miss, who is trying to still find their identity? Chambliss is interesting, though. He's an interesting quarterback. Who wins this game, Georgia or Old Miss? Let's start right from the beginning. Let's go prediction right away.
Prediction right away. I'm kind of leaning Ole Miss. There's something about this team, and you just said that the Alabama Indiana game is the most intriguing to you. This game to me is the one I'm most excited about this weekend.
Okay.
I don't know. It just feels a lot more 50-50. Like, Texas Tech, I think has a real shot, honestly, against Oregon. I think that they're probably the better team. That doesn't mean that necessarily they'll win. I think if you break down Alabama, Indiana, everything points towards Indiana. And we did our preview of Miami, Ohio State. You'll have to give that a watch if you haven't already on the channel. But this game, to me, feels very much like it could go either way. The spread is 6.5 in the favor of Georgia. I honestly think Ole Miss covers that. I think that this ends up being a pretty close game. But obviously it could be a late touchdown to push it to 7 or whatever. That would result in Georgia covering. I am going to lean Ole Miss here. I think it ends up being one of those who has the ball last, who makes the most of their early possessions type of games. But I like what Chambliss is about. I like how this team kind of fought back. Obviously, it was only against Tulane, but with no Lane Kiffin, if you will, they feels like they're very much together in this, playing for each other as opposed to playing for like a head coach or whatever. They're playing for, Lacey's playing for Chambliss, who's playing for Wallace. Like, they're playing for each other out there on the field, which is a very powerful force. And I think it might be enough in this one to get Ole Miss to the next round.
Old Miss was leading the game. They've played this game before, but they played in Athens. Let's remember this. Georgia did win this game 43-35, but Old Miss was leading heading into the fourth quarter. And then Georgia took over. And you can say that was home field heroics. You can say whatever it was, but they scored 17 points in that fourth quarter. They were down 35-26 heading into the final frame. They wound up winning this game 43-36. Gunnar Stockton was great in that game. If you remember, if you just go back and if you want to be a box score warrior, I mean, this is the game to pay attention to. Gunnar Stockton had 4 touchdowns, 289, was 26 for 31. He was near perfect in that football game. Also rushed for a touchdown, 60 yards on the ground as well. He was very, very good. Georgia had a ton of yards against this defense. 510 total yards against Old Miss. And again, a lot of that happened in the fourth quarter. I wonder how much that comes into play, knowing that this isn't in Athens anymore. This is in New Orleans. This is a neutral site game. And this is really, truly a neutral site game. I think you're going to get a true mix, a true 50-50 mix of who's in the stadium between Old Miss fans and Georgia fans. I don't think there's any home field advantage at all for the Bulldogs.
I do think there is a very true token of truth, I suppose, about, Ole Miss crumbling late. Like, I don't think of all of the points you've brought up today so far, this one is the one that reigns most true to me. I really do think that there is something to be said, and this is just a vibes assessment. This is kind of my thing here. Ole Miss feels like that flash in the pan, like, we'll get you early. If we knock you off your feet, we're going to dominate this game team. And Georgia feels like the much more consistent, might get us a little bit early, but we're going to fight through this game. And kind of like a Derrick Henry, right? Like, Derrick Henry might average 1 to 2 yards a carry in the first quarter, but he's probably averaging something closer to 8 or 9 yards a carry in the fourth. He's just going to keep on trucking, carry after carry after carry, and it'll get to you. Georgia really does feel like they can just stay in this game. As long as they don't get down by 30 points, they're going to find a way to strike, and Gunnar Stockton's going to throw some pass, and it's going to be some crazy highlight, and they're going to win this game. When it comes down to full game assessment, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, I actually think there's a very real chance that Georgia wins this fourth quarter. As far as the neutral site, I could see that being a small factor here. But I think both these teams are professionals. I just don't think it's going to have a major impact. Like it is going to be a true neutral site game. We're not playing, in Georgia, even though it's a neutral site game. Like this is going to be legit. I think Ole Miss has a very real shot, but they probably have to kind of hit Georgia hard enough to knock them off their feet entirely.
You found a way to piss off both Ole Miss and Georgia in one sentence, and it's not by accidentally calling them Oregon. It was by talking about an Alabama running back in Derrick Henry. That was how you did it. I mean, insane. In a preview, you bring up Alabama somehow with two SEC schools that are not Alabama. Look, I think the fact that this is at a neutral site is going to mean a lot more than the fact that it's not. You're talking about not having 93,000 strong in Athens at Sanford Stadium. You're having about, maybe if you're lucky, 35, 40,000 Georgia fans, and you have to compete against Ole Miss fans. I do think this is going to be truly maybe a 50-50 kind of mix. Maybe Georgia takes a little bit of an advantage, maybe. But I mean, like geographically, these fans both travel very well too. Like I would not be surprised if this was like a true 50-50 mix of fans in this game for sure. Trinidad Chambliss is so interesting to me. I think his path to the SEC, being from Ferris State, obviously a D2 kind of quarterback going to the SEC, and obviously what he's done over this season has been so interesting. He didn't have his best game against Georgia. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't his best game. But when you look at the rest of the stats, this is one thing that certainly interests me. This is a game that obviously Georgia came back in. They scored 17 straight. You would think that they would have all these mistakes, right? Ole Miss would have all these mistakes, and why Georgia came back, not a single turnover was in this game. And Georgia wins by one single possession. Is it that simple, Nick? Is it that simple that when it's all said and done, the winner of the turnover battle wins this football game?
Actually, yes, obviously turnovers are going to be huge in this one. The game, or the stat that I was looking at, I think is going to be very important here, is how does Ole Miss's run defense look, and how do they handle early downs? If they allow Georgia to stay on track, on schedule, if you will, get into second and third and shorts, I think they're going to struggle. And historically this season, they've ranked about 108th in early downs EPA per play. So, I think that's going to be a big factor in this one. If they don't force Georgia to have to convert on some third and longs, I think that Georgia's not going to have a problem. Like I was just talking about them chugging along throughout this game. If they can chug along and keep these drives sustained, you talk about time of possession and whether it's like a meaningful stat or not. I do think that if Georgia stays on track and time of possession becomes a factor in this one, they'll have the upper hand because they're going to heat up as they get into this game. That's at least how I see this going. I obviously turnovers are massive, and I'd love to see some of like the major data stats on turnover differentials in games and how impactful they are in playoffs versus regular season and this, that, and the other, because I know they're huge. But I am leaning towards, because I have trust in Ole Miss's offense, I am leaning towards, can their defense keep Georgia at bay? Because I don't know if Ole Miss is capable of being perfect and winning every offensive possession. And that's what it's going to need to be if their defense can't keep up with Georgia.
Here's a fun one to wrap up this conversation here. If Ole Miss beats Georgia, obviously they took down Tulane, but this is a different beast. If they beat Georgia without Lane Kiffin, what does that do to his legacy as he takes on LSU?
Well, I mean, it looks good for his recruiting, doesn't it? I mean, it shows that he can get the right players in the building. If that's that way. That's the way I look at it. Obviously, it doesn't look good to win without their head coach, but I would first look at the team building, the roster, and what they were able to accomplish. But yeah, I think the general population is going to say, well, why do we even have Lane Kiffin then? I think it's pretty clear that whoever we put in to coach the team that he puts together, they can really accomplish anything.
So are you trying to say that if Ole Miss wins this game, there is a potential Lane Kiffin overrated trend that could happen on social media?
Oh, on social media, 100%. I don't know if that's necessarily like fair. I don't know if I would be in that camp, but social media, yeah, you'll definitely hear it. It will be very loud.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you on that one. Hey, the MVP race for the NFL, I think might be over. I think it might finally be over. And I wasn't expecting this. There's still a week to go. Now, obviously things can change, but it looks like Drake May's got it in the bag after what happened on Monday Night Football. Matt Stafford, 3 interceptions, one pick six, another that should have been a pick six. I mean, he just stepped out of bounds. I mean, it was a bad game for Matt Stafford. Falcons take down the Rams 27-24. Let's talk a little bit about Monday Night Football. We can talk about this MVP race, but I mean, first of all, the Falcons. I mean, taking down the Rams. The Rams were seen as one of the best teams in the NFL, and now I think they might be broken.
I think the Seahawks literally broke them. That game was so epic, but I think that they took something out of the Rams and out of the life that they had. The Falcons obviously needed that win. Now 7-9, still third in the NFC South standings per my count, which I'm not the best at counting, more of a vibes guy, as we have clarified multiple times on this show. But the Atlanta Falcons still a legit team. It's just a little surprising that the Rams, I think that's how I view it, the Rams didn't look as good in this one. Bijan Robinson obviously was great. Kirk Cousins, not necessarily too bad, 13-21, 26 and one touchdown. You could argue he had a better night than Matthew Stafford. The Falcons just did enough in this one, in my opinion, to stay afloat. Like, they didn't get too flashy or anything too crazy. I don't know. This is, to me, I raise more questions about the Rams losing than the Falcons winning in this one. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I will say I'm interested in seeing what the Falcons continue to do here. Obviously, their defense has got much better over this season. It was one of the worst pass rushing defenses in all of the NFL last year. They go and get some pieces in the draft, and this defense looks a lot better. This defense for the Falcons, especially on primetime, has done a very good job at shutting down some big name quarterbacks. Josh Allen, Matt Stafford, Sam Darnold, they've done a very good job at taking care of business. They just haven't had this consistency on the offensive side with either Michael Penix or Kirk Cousins or whatever the case may be, the receiving core being injured. There's been some issues. I wonder if wins like this, where you have a potential getting to the closest you can get of being 500 without actually being over it with the 17-game schedule, you can potentially be 8-9 on the season. And, of course, you play the New Orleans Saints to end your year, who is on a winning streak themselves. I wonder if this saves Raheem Morris's job, because there's been a lot of talk about if Raheem Morris is the right guy for the continued success of the Atlanta Falcons, who have been down in the dumps over the last couple seasons. I wonder if this late season buildup is enough to save his job.
Yeah, you could definitely make that argument. It's kind of the same thing. It's not the same, but kind of the same thing as what happened in Miami when it seemed like the writing was absolutely on the wall for Mike McDaniels, and then the Dolphins ripped off quite a few wins. It just kind of depends on the ownership, right, and what they've seen, and if they believe in the vision or not. I would say that this is this win in and of itself, not even if they finish. I think if they lose to the Saints, like, yeah, it's kind of wraps. But if they can finish 8-9, this win could be the one that sets Raheem Morris over the edge of like, okay, we'll give you one more year, or at least portion of next year. We'll see how you start through the first 10 games. If you have a winning record, 6-4, we'll continue that, because 6-4, I mean, geez, they would have to go 1-5 to get to the point that they're at now, 7-9, right? That'd be a great start to the year for the Falcons. So I agree with you, though. I think this was a massive win for the Falcons organization. I would be curious. I'm not super tapped into Falcons Twitter. How do Falcons fans feel about another year of Raheem Morris?
Yeah, I would be curious that as well. And obviously they can't rebuild in the draft right away. They traded their first round pick to get that pass rush in last year's draft to the Rams. So the Rams actually losing this game not only put them lower in the NFC standings, that also took them out of the consideration of potentially having a top 10 draft pick in the draft next year. Now, who knows if the Rams actually need it? A lot of people are thinking maybe they would use it on a quarterback. There's been obviously the rumors of them putting their picks together and trying to trade up to get a Mendoza with McVay, which would be insane to me if that actually happened in real life. But now you're sitting with the Rams as the 6th seed in the NFC playoffs. If the season ended today, which we are only a week away from that happening, they'll play the Philadelphia Eagles in the first round of the playoffs. How confident do you feel about the Rams right now? They have to head into the link to take on Philly.
I still feel pretty good about the Rams. I mean, this was an ugly loss, but honestly, it hasn't shaken me too much. Like, they're not some superpower, I would say. Like, they're pretty good. It's just based on vibes. Like, if you don't want me to break down the actual stats on what a Rams versus Eagles game would look like, vibes wise, still feel pretty good about the Rams. I mean, they made a push late in this game. There was a situation on the sideline with Puka. What happened there? Like, they very much were at least in the conversation to win this game. It's not like they lost this game to the Falcons by 30 points, which after that, I'd say, well, maybe they are just straight up broken, right? Maybe they have been completely lost in the sauce. But no, they were in it. Obviously, a bad game for Stafford with 3 picks, and you mentioned a pick 6 could have been 2. I would say that as long as Stafford doesn't have a game like that, they're in a game against the Eagles. That's how I would perceive that. But no, this is I'm not counting the Rams out, basically, is what I'm saying.
And as long as Drake May doesn't have a game like Matt Stafford did this past week, I think Drake May is going to be the MVP. And as a Patriot fan, you probably really like that. He's currently at 4,200 yards, 30 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's been sacked 47 times, by the way, and he's still doing these kind of numbers. That's one of the highest sack rates in the NFL, and they're still finding a way to do that type of success when they get the amount of offensive line help around him, which is what they're going to build on in the offseason and the draft. It's going to be exciting. Obviously, having Will Campbell out doesn't help that conversation as well. But Drake May, I think, is only going to get better, and we could see him as the next MVP this season. I mean, you're talking about year 2 as Drake May, and now he's going to be the MVP. I mean, this has got that Tom Brady vibes to it. You're a vibes guy. Is this what you're feeling?
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. I want to bring up a stat really quick. Do you know what Drake May's stat line completions wise was this last week?
Let's hear it.
19 of 21. That means that he had 2 incomplete passes. How many interceptions did Matthew Stafford throw yesterday?
He threw 3.
Ooh, more interceptions and incompletions is not a good stat if you're Matthew Stafford. No, vibes wise, it is actually incredible that I have gone from Tom Brady to Drake May in my lifetime. And I mean,
don't forget Mac Jones.
Yeah, you had Mac Jones. You had, Cam Newton in there. I try to honestly put that behind me, but I can't believe that this pick worked out. I was actually terrified that the Patriots would fumble. That was the 3 overall pick, that it just wouldn't work out. But Vrabel seems like he's a perfect hire, and Drake May is really the real deal. There's something about the way that he operates. I've watched a handful of Patriots games, but anytime they're in prime time, I am staying on until he gets done with his presser, because they usually have him join like Scott on Sports Center or whatever it is. And man, the way, or if it's even just on the field, the way he talks, you can just tell he's got what it takes. He's got the mental. Yeah. And that's something you can't really coach. Like, you can have a player out there who makes all the right reads, who throws the ball in a tight window, who can extend plays. But it's something here in the way they approach the game. It's not even in the mental side of the game, the reads and whatnot. It's in the way they approach the game. Drake May's brain is operating like an MVP. It's operating like a guy who can win 6 Super Bowls, which I'm not saying he will, but it's just the way that his brain functions. It's there, which is super, super exciting. And obviously the stats all worked out this season where he's at least a front runner to win MVP. It's not over yet. But I'm more excited about the future of New England. If they can keep him around, which I think if we learned anything from Tom Brady, you keep guys like this in the building, you keep him around, New England is going to be back to seeing a lot of success.
It's unfair for me to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. Drake May, this is year 2, and he's already maybe most likely going to be the MVP. It took Tom Brady year 8 to get his first MVP. Really, year 7, if you want to talk about year 7 of starting. It was his 8th year in the league, though, in 2007 when he got his first MVP. Tom Brady's MVP years 2007, 2010, and 2017. He's ahead of pace if you want to put him in there. I mean, where does this show that you are potentially on a Tom Brady trajectory, or you got to worry about those Super Bowl rings first? Get yourself in the mix first. You got an AFC championship. Maybe we should pump the brakes here. I know it's unfair, but should we have this conversation? Should it begin?
I think if you're Drake May or anybody in the Patriots organization, you're going to hear the same answer. Or if you ask them, they would all give you the same answer. Like, hey, we've got another. We got to get the Dolphins out of the way. That's how I would approach it too. I want to see them attack the next game, and then once we're in the playoffs, it's first game, second game. Obviously, if it's a wild card or a first round bye, it's going to affect if you're starting wild card or divisional or whatever. I think that the way, that's what I was talking about with the mentals, is that Drake May and everybody in the building feels like they're taking it one game at a time. And yeah, he's probably ahead of pace if he wins this MVP of Tom Brady's career, which is awesome. But I will say, to play devil's advocate here, just trying to keep myself on earth, is that the pace at which the NFL moves is much different now, right? Like if Drake May wasn't, basically MVP caliber in 4 years, is he still the starter, versus Tom Brady, who it took him, 7 years of being a starter to get to that MVP level. I'm not saying that he's going to be done if he falls off next year, but I think that the way the NFL operates is much different now. And so, it could be a quick, well, you had your flash in the pan. We haven't really seen much over the last 3 years. We're going to go ahead and move on. Your rookie contract's up. We're going to try somebody else. I think that would be maybe the dumbest thing the Patriots have done, but I could see something like that operating or happening because this NFL landscape is very much different than it was in 2007, in 2005. I would say this guy's very capable of doing great things for the Patriots, but he's going to take it one game at a time, and I am going to take it one day at a time here.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough, Nick.
Keep my hands off the ground,
Let's get a little bit more hypothetical here. I think that'll be a fun way to continue on this show here at Marv Rauh in the morning. Be sure to hit subscribe wherever you're listening or watching, right here on YouTube or anywhere you listen on audio. Really appreciate you guys stopping by this morning. Jordan Love, Green Bay Packers. Obviously, it's been an interesting year for them. Training for Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons gets injured, out with ACL injuries, out for the rest of the year. They get to the playoffs. They're in the playoffs. They're probably going to be the bottom spot in the playoffs, a 7 seed, but you're there. You made the dance. You have a tie on your record. I mean, everything just looks weird about this year. And then add more to the weirdness. Well, your backup quarterback, Malik Willis, has played your last couple of games, and he's looked pretty good. He hasn't looked bad. And although those games did not come for Green Bay Packer wins, both of those were losses. That crazy Saturday night game against the Bears in overtime, and then the Ravens taking down them just past week, 41-24, where Derrick Henry just completely went off. Neither of them were because of Malik Willis. Malik Willis looked very good in this game. Here's my conversation for this. Because Malik Willis obviously is in a contract year, he's going to find a way to probably compete for a job. We're seeing what other quarterbacks in the league are doing right now with Sam Darnold's, with Baker Mayfield's, who are having resurgences in their career. Is there a world, the NFL, if you will, where Jordan Love is traded this offseason by the Green Bay Packers?
I tried to talk myself into yes. I just don't see it. I feel like it's rare that any team gets a quarterback like Jordan Love, especially when you consider that team is going from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. Like the tear of quarterbacks that they've been on is pretty crazy. I'm not saying that Jordan Love is some, superpower going to win them like 4 Super Bowls like Drake May probably will for the Patriots, but he's really solid. And there are a lot of quarterbacks out there that are not that solid, and you don't want to find yourself in a quarterback, carousel, if you will, of constantly, trying out new guys. You go through 3 quarterbacks in a year. That's not good, right? You kind of want to have one guy for the whole year. And I think that Jordan Love is capable of winning them games. I think if you're Green Bay, I would actually be interested. What would the argument be for them to get rid of Jordan Love just to roll with Malik Willis moving forward? Do you think he's really the answer there?
Well, if they thought that they could still win football games, Malik Willis, and right now that isn't the case, right? They've lost those last 2, although he's looked great, but you can't point it at him. And
Right.
They feel like they can build other things around him with the type of money that you can get rid of from not having Jordan Love. If you decide to keep Malik Willis, I don't think you have to sign him to a 4-year, $220 million contract like you currently have Jordan Love. He's averaging $55 million a year, making one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, at least at the time of the signing. He's through Green Bay through 2028 at the moment. So Jordan Love is nowhere. He's not going anywhere unless you traded him. Obviously, he's not going anywhere. Malik Willis is obviously a free agent. The thought process here is the way Malik Willis has looked in the system is not much different than what Jordan Love has looked in the system.
Okay.
And if you can trade and get value in Jordan Love and build around all the pieces, if you look at what the NFC North looks like right now with the Chicago Bears, with the Detroit Lions currently sitting there, and you still don't count out the Vikings. The Vikings are not going to fall off the face of the earth. This is one of the toughest divisions in football. You got to find a way to be creative. And they finally draft a wide receiver, Matthew Golden. That didn't really work out. So is Green Bay going to get scared to do that again in the draft? It's the first time they drafted a receiver in the first round in like I think it was 20 years or something. Yeah, it was a very long time. So do you make a bold move and try to build a different way with different draft capital, maybe some more money in free agency? And the way you do that is by moving Jordan Love.
I can actually, that does make sense. Okay. I can see where your thought process is there. But the question for me is, does LaFleur have enough leash to do that? Like,
Interesting.
honestly,
That's interesting. Yeah.
I don't know if he's got enough wiggle room to make that kind of a move. I'm sure he can make some crazy moves in the draft if he were to keep Love. But if he ends up moving on from Love, moving forward with Willis, and then they try to build around him that way, and
if it doesn't work, it's a death sentence. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I think,
but if it does,
as much as we exactly, yeah, it's a very much like a catch-22 flip of the coin type of thing. Like you have to remember these guys are still coaching for their jobs. Like they're coaching for the team's success, but they're also coaching for, trying to keep themselves in the building, to keep their paychecks coming in. So my guess is they wouldn't, just because LaFleur probably doesn't have enough leash to do that. To me, like if that were to fail, he would immediately be fired. I don't even know how much of a leash you'd have to have for that to go poorly and you'd still be okay. You'd have to maybe be, I don't even know, Bill Belichick might not have enough leash for that as far as NFL teams go. But I just have a hard time playing that out in my mind. It just feels like Love is the guy, and the Packers really want this to work. And I think they're willing to pay the luxury tax of what he would cost. And they're able to find a way to win with him taking up that much space. I think, next year, next year with Parsons being healthy, at least at some point, they're going to take a step forward in the defensive, department. They looked great when he was on the team. And offensively, it's just another year in the system. They might pick up a few weapons, probably be in the 4th or 5th round, but they're going to pick up a few weapons and they're going to get a little bit better. I think they stick with Love. I don't see it playing out any other way.
I think they stick with him too. It's just an interesting conversation to think of. Maybe they do it. And if they did, like, it would turn the NFL upside down. And then on the flip side, obviously, the Packers started off the season pretty well. They started off 5-1-1. They had Tucker Kraft, and Tucker Kraft's injured. Jordan Love obviously injured. Micah Parsons obviously injured. There's a lot of things that you can look back at and be like, well, this team obviously got you to the playoffs with Jordan Love there. He didn't get injured until that Bears game that just happened on right before Christmas on the 20th. And hopefully he's ready to go again before the playoffs happen. And if that's the case, he could maybe make a run and maybe upset 1 or 2 games, or maybe even make a deep run in the playoffs, and then this completely goes away. There's another world. Speaking of the NFL, if you will, there's another world where Malik Willis, A.J. Brown, and Derrick Henry and Mike Vrabel are still on the Tennessee Titans and absolutely cooking in the AFC. I mean, that's another sign of how bad the Titans organization was. All of these players are elsewhere now. And you look at what Malik Willis has turned into. Obviously, we know what Derrick Henry is. We know what A.J. Brown is. We see what Vrabel's doing with the Patriots right now when he actually has some competence behind him. I mean, the Titans could have had this, and they don't have it now.
The sad part about that is kind of that we knew what Derrick Henry, we knew what A.J. Brown, we knew what Mike Vrabel were at that time. Malik Willis, I would say, was more of a question mark, at least
for sure
at that point in time. But the other three, like, how'd you fumble that one? You want to play NFL? One more question for you. Yeah. If Jordan Love were to be traded, if Jordan Love were to be, where would he go? Where's the right fit for Jordan Love? Hypothetically speaking, of course.
Fit. New York Jets have multiple draft picks in the first round.
It'd be the end of his career. See ya.
100%. 100%. But you said who would make the move? I mean, that's the first one that came to my mind.
Okay.
Or the Miami Dolphins.
I could see him with the Dolphins.
Mike McDaniel.
I could do that.
I think
that'd be a career-saving move for McDaniel. Absolutely.
Career-saving opportunity. I don't know.
Well, yeah, if it doesn't work out, it's over. Yeah.
I think Jordan Love should do that, but I think there's a lot more problems than just quarterback in Miami. On the Jet side, you're right. That's a career killer. That's just nothing can save the Jets. We need to burn the Jets, jettison them out of the league.
I feel so bad for every Jets fan out there. I really do.
No, I don't. You can be a Giants or Bills fan. I don't. You have a choice.
It's so bad, bro. Oh gosh.
let's finish off this show. Let's talk about the Houston Texans because I think
Oh.
they're not being talked about enough. And there is a lot to be discussed about them. I think they might be the hottest team heading into the playoffs, at least on the AFC side. There's definitely an argument for it. Now, the AFC playoffs are going to be absolutely wild this season, and Houston still has a chance to win the AFC South. So there's an opportunity that's not likely, but there's an opportunity that they could be the 3 seed. There's an opportunity that they could be the, I think, 5, 6, or 7 seed. Like that's just how it's sitting right now. Either way, I don't know if I want to play the Houston Texans in the wild card round. I don't know if I want to do that. CJ Stroud looks good. The wide receiver core, I know you've been paying attention to that wide receiver core. They're finally starting to shine. Nico Collins, Noel. I mean, man, it's just so much fun. Jalen Higgins. They're such a fun wide receiver core to watch in that defense. Overall, the Houston Texans are a very fun team right now, and they might be the most dangerous in the AFC at this moment.
If they beat the Colts, they will go into the playoffs on a 9-game win streak.
That's insane.
Feels like a pretty good thing, no?
And yeah, and then if you want to even go farther than that, the only loss they have in the last 11 games is a 3-point loss to the Broncos, who are currently sitting as the best team in the AFC record-wise.
It's an even better point right there. And you bring up the receiving core. Obviously, the conversation of the Houston Cyclones or the Iowa State Texans doesn't quite work as well, but it's very prominent with Xavier Hutchinson, Jalen Noel, and Jaden Higgins all on the roster, and those guys fall at 3, 4, and 5 as far as receiving yards on the season. Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz are incredible, and then it's Higgins, Hutchinson, and Noel. Like they have been absolutely electric for this team. Obviously, I'm actually a little shocked. Noel only has 279. It feels like every week there's some highlight of him ripping off a 50-yarder, but I don't know. Maybe if you are getting called back. This has been potentially one of the most fun teams to watch this season. It definitely feels like, you want to go back to vibes, feels very lighthearted, feels like a fun team to watch. And so I would say if you're going into the playoffs and maybe your team's been eliminated, probably a lot of Chiefs fans not sure who to root for. If they could stomach rooting for the Texans, I know it's another AFC team. Feels like a very fun team. There's just a lot of like lightheartedness is the best word I can use. It just feels like fun and CJ Stroud and what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball too is been electric. Obviously, their last 3 games haven't been anything crazy, but holding the Cardinals, Raiders, and Chargers to 21 and 16 is solid. Chiefs to 10, Colts to 16. Their most points they've given up in the last few weeks was to the Jags, and they gave up 29, and that was 8 games ago. You mentioned the Broncos; they even held them to 18. So this defense is maybe the best in the NFL, and the offense is so much fun. I don't know how you couldn't root for this team if your team isn't in the playoffs.
Yeah, they haven't allowed more than 30 points all season. I mean, it's super impressive.
Incredible.
And if you look at every single one of their losses, they started the season 0-3. All 5 of their losses are 1 possession or less. I don't know if you have another team that has that same resume. I don't know if you have that. And you look at like the Broncos losses, there's a couple losses that they have won or lost by more than 1 possession, but half their wins are by 1 possession or less. On the Texans side, there's moments where they've completely blown teams out. Now they have a lot of 1 possession wins, don't get me wrong, but they beat the Ravens 44-10. They beat the Chiefs 20-10. They beat the Cardinals 40-20. Like this is a very good football team. I wouldn't want to face them. Right now, it looks like they're going to be either potentially the 5 or the 7 seed. I think that's where it winds up right now. I think the Chargers are going to sit at the 6 or the 7. It's actually, I think that's where the case is. I think we are going to see the Houston Texans as the 5. That's my guess. And we're going to see them either play the Ravens or the Steelers.
And I think they win that game. I don't think they even have a lot of trouble in that game. I think this team is going to be coming in on a ton of momentum, playing in the wild card. I know that there's that stat at some like 50% of teams that are the 1 seed make the Super Bowl or whatever. Yeah. This Texans team could be a part of that 49%. Like it feels like they have the juice. They've got whatever it is that they need to actually win games, but also the momentum and going into the playoffs. Like this Colts team, I don't feel great about them. I just don't. I think that's a very winnable
Riley
game.
Leonard's getting the start against the Colts as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say you go in again. My guess is they're going to go in on a 9-game win streak, and they're going to. It feels to me like this Texans team is not going to be a common pick for a Super Bowl team in the AFC because there are teams like the Broncos and the Patriots in the Super Bowl side, even the Bills. But this is a team to look out for. Like that was kind of what we titled this segment, right? it's time to talk about the Texans. That's what we're doing. Like, keep your eye on them. I'm not saying they're winning a Super Bowl. I'm not saying that they're, going to dominate and get their way to the conference championship even. They have to do it, but they are very capable of doing it.
The only thing that comes to mind right now is if they are the 5 seed and they have to play either the Steelers or the Ravens, and my guess is the Ravens, the way that Derrick Henry looked the last couple weeks about winning the division. Can you stop Derrick Henry? And obviously you won that game 44-10 the first time around. The Texans are 4th in the league, basically 3rd in the league in stopping the run. They average a 94.8 yards per game against. They are the 4th best rushing defense team in the NFL. Super underrated team right now. No one's talking about the Houston Texans. They absolutely need to, because would not be shocked if this team is the 5 seed and we see them sitting in the AFC Championship game in a couple weeks.
This team's incredible. I mean, they really are. Do not forget about the Texans, because they will sneak up on you. If you're not watching their games, all of a sudden you're like, wait, how are the Texans are the Texans going to go to the Super Bowl? What's going on here? Very real possibility.
Yeah, definitely real possibility for sure. I think we are in for a great playoffs a couple weeks away, and we are just there. College football playoffs are just a couple days away. And of course, we got a lot more to talk about over the next few days right here on Marvin Rauh in the Morning. We're not going anywhere. We're ending the year and beginning of the year with you right here on Marvin Rauh in the Morning. So be sure to tune in every day, Monday through Friday, right here on YouTube or audio, wherever you're listening, live every morning right here on Marvin Rauh in the Morning. We'll see you back here next time tomorrow, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern, right here on Marvin Rauh in the Morning.